Broadway star Idina Menzel once said, "You can't get it right all the time, but you can try your best. If you've done that, all that's left is to accept your shortcomings and have the courage to try to overcome them." This is the Producer's Lounge podcast, the best podcast online for tips and tricks on producing great film, television, and web content. Welcome back for Season 3, Episode 4, hosted and produced by greaterandgrander.com. On this week's episode, we're chatting with Grae, who has produced groundbreaking entertainment journalism programs including Rotten Tomatoes online movie review show and the Miss Moviefone show, as well as shows like The Nostradamus Effect. We discuss learning how to be a filmmaker from a young age, deciding where to go after film school, and how to grow as a person. I've known Grae for over 15 years, and I'm so excited and thrilled to be sharing our gained wisdom with you. Here now is my conversation with Grae.
See you.
Good to see you too.
And today I actually ended up with like the world's busiest Sunday, so 2:30 ended up being more of a hard out than a soft out. So
got it. In that case, like, can I ask what the busyness is, or is it like
actually like
just busy?
lots of good activity now that things are kind of opening back up. So
awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's interesting meetings, stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, I won't pry then. But how are you doing otherwise? It sounds like good things are happening. How is life treating you?
Doing good. It's been like a long, quiet time for entertainment journalism. So
yeah,
now that we're not doing so many things on Zoom, it's becoming interesting again, even though it's like a new normal for everyone, but especially us.
Interesting. How has it morphed from your perspective? Because I've seen like your spots on KTLA and KCAL and like those are not over Zoom, but what are some like other, I assume you're talking about other entertainment journalism interviews that you're doing, or?
Yeah, I mean, when the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
junket interviews all interviews went to virtual.
Yeah.
And so that was like probably the biggest development in junkets since junkets became a thing. There wasn't really a lot of new technological innovation needed.
Yeah.
And so things switched over to virtual. And the good news is for small projects, that means that they can get coverage in a lot of places where they couldn't before.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's good for them. And so, in theory, a small independent film could get coverage in Malaysia, where before they wouldn't have been able to fly that person in to do an interview. So they would lose that coverage. And so cool on certain levels and definitely good getting the word out about smaller projects. However, as everybody knows, after spending years sitting in Zoom meetings, it's really difficult to catch a vibe.
Yeah.
It's such a drag. Like every day and every project just to sit and look at someone through a screen, it really does something to your brain.
Yeah. I've started referring to reality jokingly as like, oh, it's when it's in the work cinematic universe or the Ken Burns cinematic universe when it's just reality. Yeah.
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 So that is still around and nothing is ever going to get rid of virtual, but now it's been a little bit more fun being able to see people and it's more a given again.
Yeah. And you have a unique style of in-person interviews. I did in preparation for this, I watched the Jennifer Lawrence unicorn interview. That was incredible, by the way.
Thank you.
So can I ask, what are you like from a work perspective? Like who are you covering for now? Like, because I know you're with Rotten Tomatoes. I know you're doing stuff on local TV.
So formerly of Rotten Tomatoes, yep, that's where I got my big start, where I created their video content department. Essentially, I was like, they didn't have one, weirdly, and when they found out that I could produce, host, edit, and then write about my
Yeah.
experience.
Mhm.
They were like, "Oh, great. We just have to hire one person to do all that? Amazing."
Classic corporate America. Okay.
Classic. Classic. But as always, like the other side of that coin is like a great opportunity, you know.
Yeah.
Um, the editorial style of the site really fit my voice and who I am.
Mhm.
And so it was really creatively fun. Like it was very free and
Mhm.
we could try a lot of things out. And I really learned a lot about who I am and
Uh-huh.
the reason that I enjoy doing this stuff because it's fluffy and can be silly. And if you want to be negative, maybe you could count it as pointless. But at the, if you want to be positive,
Mhm.
entertainment is important. And, even being able to sit down on TikTok and watch
Mhm.
a dumb little video with somebody talking to Jennifer Lawrence, if it makes you laugh, like that's valuable, you know.
Yep.
Um, I'm always juggling that conversation. So after that, I went on to Moviefone. I'm
Uh-huh.
currently working with the National Association of Theater Owners. I'm
Oh,
working with
wow.
CBS here in Los Angeles. I do all kinds of stuff.
Well, like, okay, that's fantastic. And kudos and congratulations to you. Like, we met years ago. Like, well, actually, I'm going to take a step back. Like, when did you first realize, like, when you were first interested and passionate about movies and TV?
I mean, when I was a kid, I knew
Yeah.
that I like movies more than other people like movies.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
So we had like a group of friends that would always hang out every weekend. And most of the time, we
Mhm.
would go to the movies and then we would just hang out and be obnoxious children afterwards. And I always decided what we watched.
Ah,
Like, I was
okay.
like, "Oh, the movie that we really need to see this week looks like, Jurassic Park," or, like, my friends also scoffed at me when we saw the trailer for Austin Powers, and I said, "This is gonna be funny." And they were like,
Nice.
"Are you kidding? Like, what a terrible movie. This is gonna be horrible." And I was like, "Nope, it's gonna be brilliant." Like, and I was kinda like, "Do you guys remember, like, when you said the same thing about Ace Ventura?" And, like, you said that was gonna be horrible, and then here we are watching it for years and years and years, like, that's gonna be the same thing. So, I always knew that I liked movies more than other people, and,
Mhm.
so I made movies first.
Okay.
So,
And was that in LA or did you grow up somewhere else?
like, I grew up in Colorado and was making movies with my friends, and I
Mhm.
realized that I could go to college to make movies and study that, and
Mhm.
so I started off behind the camera, especially because I've always been very interested in tech,
Mhm.
and
Oh.
it was a lot easier in my mind to be behind the camera than in front of the camera. That was sort of too vulnerable for me at that time, so
Mm. That makes sense. And when growing up in Colorado, did you have one of those like old like that shot the small VHS-C cassettes or
my mom had the regular size VHS camcorder.
oh
Mm.
wow.
Yeah, that was a beast, and she gets the like, most of the credit/blame for me being how I am because she was always filming the family for the home movies, and she loved films growing up, and so we did a lot of movie watching in my house, and, when I started editing as a kid, I
Mhm.
would hook that camcorder up to the VCR, and I would
Mm.
do a linear first I'd do a paper edit with all the footage that I had.
Oh wow.
I know, and then I would do a linear edit with the camcorder and the VCR, and just until I got it right, because you had once you started, you couldn't stop, you had to do the whole thing, and,
Yeah.
I in retrospect, I don't know who taught me how to do that.
Interesting.
I have no idea if I came up with it myself because I was good at hooking things up to other things,
Mhm.
or if someone told me or planted the seed, I can't remember, so
Mhm.
I've I guess I'll take credit for it, but I feel like it had to be someone else because that's a big leap to make.
That is I was in the same boat as you, but I never would have thought as a kid to do a paper edit first and then do like tape to tape or camcorder to VCR like that. That's really
Yeah,
smart.
thank you. I'm not sure I can take credit. I don't know, but I I do know that the way that my brain has always worked
Hmm.
is taking potentially unrelated things or things that are separate from each other and figuring out how to put them together. So like I had basically two paths. I was either going to become an editor or like Dr. Frankenstein. So I don't know.
Nice.
I also like sewing, which is the same kind of thing. It's like you
Oh
start out with
yeah.
pieces, then you turn it into something else. And my brain has always kind of been like that. So it's entirely possible that I was like, I don't know. I've been shooting footage of my drama club for 2 weeks and I have no idea what I've got. So I have to sit down and make a list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, you had a dailies list
Yeah.
before you knew it. And
Maybe
then
I'm a genius. I don't know. Maybe.
I'll go with that. I'm gonna say you're a genius. Yes.
Hey, thanks. Best
And
podcast
it
ever.
yeah. And then that took you to UT Austin.
Yeah.
What was the process of deciding to go to UT Austin like?
I had family in Texas and
Mm.
had spent a lot of time in Austin and I really liked it. And
Ah.
it turned out, well, I didn't even know there was a school there. When I was a kid, I
Mm.
mean, I'm not paying attention to college. And when I started to talk about it,
Mhm.
my dad was like, "Well, you know that Austin has like one of the biggest schools in the country, and you could look at the film program there and see if you like it." And I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." Like I was like, "All right, sounds good." And it looked fun, so I just went and I got approved, to enter the film program early.
Oh.
Um, Which I don't think is not in an unusual way, it's just that some people came in as a film major and other people came to school and entered the major later. It was a little
Oh,
harder,
okay.
yeah, it was a little harder as I understood to enter the major later, but it's not, it's not like I'm some
You
wunderkind and
weren't
they were like,
you weren't like the 11-year-old Doogie Howser of UT Austin.
yeah, definitely not in that respect. Um, so I always, yeah, I looked at the College of Communication
Hmm. Hmm.
and was like, "Oh, I mean, this is everything I like to do."
Hmm.
I'm journalism and, film and photography, photojournalism. And I was sort of like, "Oh, maybe public relations would be interesting. I like the public and I like relating to people." And as it turns out, I don't think I would have a passion for that job. So
Yeah,
I'm happy that I stuck with film.
yeah, yeah. I could see like because I know a couple of people who are in PR and every once in a while they just let the mask drop and they're like, I don't know, man, some bullshit. Like, I guess it's true if I said it.
Yeah, I mean, it's marketing is a super important skill. Not
Yeah.
everyone has it.
Mhm.
It's much needed.
Yeah.
And just like everything else, I think it takes a certain kind of person to do a certain kind of job. And
Hmm.
so when I deal with publicists daily, and
Hmm.
I don't think I have the metal,
Yeah.
to do what they do. So I'm happy that I didn't go in going, "Oh, public relations sounds fun," as I think I would have flunked out of college is what I'm saying.
Ah. So speaking of college, then UT Austin, who were some of your the professors that you found were like the best or you responded to most?
It's funny you would ask me that because
Mhm.
literally just the other day, I was thinking about the great, the legendary Charles Ramirez Berg, who is a film professor at UT. He is just like such a dear person. He's exactly who you want
Mhm.
educating kids.
Mhm.
He knows so much about movies and
Wow.
so funny, so engaging. He is an a favorite of Robert Rodriguez, the director, writer, producer, editor, guitar player extraordinaire. Because he's Ramirezberg is just the greatest, and it's like one of many incredible teachers that I've been blessed to work with that are just, you know, I hope that everybody out there has at least one of those teachers that kind of like was welcoming to them if they wanted to hang out after class and have a conversation about something nerdy in private, or, you know, like my high school drama teacher was he was fundamental in helping me be this person and encouraging me and telling me like that I'm a good kind of weird. Um and Ramirezberg is the same guy. Like his class is so it's so just informative and mind-opening and amazing, and then he pops up on DVD special features every once in a while.
Oh, nice.
Every once in a while, and you're like, and I just every time I'm like, ooh, and every time I talk to Robert Rodriguez, we're always like, can we just like love on Charles Ramirezberg for a second? And he's amazing. He's an amazing educator, and I just was thinking about him the other day because I was driving down the road and I was like, man, I wonder what he's doing right now. Because I mean, I'd assume at this point he's very retired. I haven't seen him around or heard of him in anything, but I was like, what a lucky student I am.
That was fantastic. Wow, that is a fantastic experience. That's amazing. Like, so, because especially since well, I won't go into the negative stories I've had, but yeah.
I mean, we all have those of like the exact
Yes.
opposite teachers, people that you have no idea why they're interested in the job of shaping minds. And when I think about those teachers, I always think about, in retrospect, they taught me some of my more prominent coping mechanisms.
Oh, interesting.
Like when people don't believe in me, when they are actively not supporting me, which I've been really fortunate not to experience very often. Like I've been so lucky to have a community of people around me that are like, go girl, like you do you. We don't get it, but yay. And so when I run into those people, it's like, well, you can kill them with kindness. Keep being the person that you are and try your hardest not to interact with them if you can avoid it. And like keep focusing on what is important in the situation. Like, I kind of had coincidentally like battles with math teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Like the math teachers were the ones really that never liked me. But I survived their class because I still would try. I just went to other teachers for help. I would use my relationships with other teachers if I didn't get something, or my parents, and I just would stay away from those people, and I just made it through. Like tried to do my work and like not give them any opportunity to punish me for anything.
Nice.
Like lay low. And so I guess if I was in my head, in my therapy mind, I might call that avoidance. Maybe?
That's the nice way of saying it. I'm taking notes as we talk, and I just wrote down ignore as one of the steps. So yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know that there's any winning with people that don't support you. And so I think this whole path, whenever I run into the very rare person that is like, what is her deal? Like, we don't get it. We don't like it. We don't want it here. I just shift focus away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. You're not really going to win those people over. So.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, especially in entertainment, there's a lot of people who are insecure when they see someone else's success. And so they're immediately going to belittle that other person's achievements, or even to their face sometimes.
I
Yeah.
admire that way more, to be honest. I think people that are honest, that are sort of forthright about their contempt are so much
Oh.
more interesting. It's obviously like hard to hear, but it's the devil you know. I'd much rather know than be, blindsided by someone. And
Hmm.
it just the common denominator with all those people is just sadness. That's it. It's like
Yeah.
whatever it comes from, it's like, was it, were you not hugged enough? Um, did you make yourself really vulnerable at one point in your life and feel like you got punished for it?
Hmm.
You insecure for some reason? Because it just, no matter how much it hurts, it doesn't have anything to do with me most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what a lot of us need to remember who face that kind of backlash. It's not about us, it's about them and their needs
Yeah.
to whatever. But going back to positive stuff, you graduated UT Austin, and
Yes.
yes, and then and then came the decision of, like, I'm sure you were thinking, well, you could have stayed in Austin, you could have gone back to Colorado, or you could have jumped to LA or New York. And I'm wondering how you finally resolved on LA.
I figured that as a person who just decided to major in film, which is
Hmm.
like not too great of a decision. Like I should have, like I could have majored in business admin or
Hmm.
something more useful. But uh I sort of only felt I had three choices at the time, that it was either Austin, LA, or New York.
Hmm.
And the way that I saw it was, back then there weren't many jobs
Hmm.
in Austin,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of people competing for them, and I didn't feel like that was the move. So
Hmm.
I did kind of the same thing. I went where I had a support system in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and I came here and was sort of like, ooh, I remember hating it here when I was a kid. Like, why did I do this? Why did I forget? Because it just New York felt like too much for me at that time.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I've heard similar stuff. Around what year was this at that point?
I mean, honestly, it was like half my life ago.
Oh,
And
okay.
so yeah, I still think New York is too much for me. I love visiting there, but like living in Manhattan, I don't think I'm tough enough.
Yeah, yeah, the few times I've gone back, because I grew up just outside New York, and I kind of was in the same mindset. Like, New York is a very specific type of personality. You have to walk very quickly, don't make eye contact, that kind of hardness.
And the energy, like
Mhm.
there's so much energy in the city that
Yeah.
I always am like exhausted when I get back to my hotel room. And
Mhm.
I think LA is more of a choose your own adventure to me, where LA is whatever you want it to be. If you want
Yes.
it to be slow, then it'll be slow.
Mhm.
If you want it to move fast, you can make it move fast. And I've always had this theory that most people leave LA and New York because the common denominator is that they tend to show you your weaknesses.
Mm, interesting.
I think most people are not ready for that conversation. And as
Mhm.
artists, we're sensitive and we want to be told that we're perfect, delicate little flowers all the time. And so if we all have challenges that we face. And if you don't really want to take them on, you tend to leave here.
Mhm.
'Cause it's
Mhm.
like, it's so expensive and it's so soul crushing. Like, why am I doing this? Because I don't like people doing the work
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
not for everyone. And
Mhm.
I don't want to give the impression I'm saying that it's bad that people leave and people who leave are quitters. That is actually not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I just think that they are not interested in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which is, I totally get. I
Mhm.
really get it. I wish I weren't interested in the conversation.
Mhm.
And I always have been. That's just my personality, is always like, ooh, this feels uncomfortable. Let's poke around in this.
And I like how you like hit on the key phrase, like doing the work, because it is work. There's a certain type of mindset where you get here and you're like, oh, I'm gonna enjoy my life in the sun, and I get a day job at a Wendy's or whatever, and just push that. But like the fact is, you do have to be doing something at the very least every week, if not every day, kind of pushing forward whatever kind of creative career you want.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
and
I don't, it just doesn't, it,
Mhm.
these kinds of things generally don't get handed to most people.
Mhm.
And so that's the first thing I tell people when they move here.
Yeah.
You need to say what it is you are,
Yeah.
because everyone's going to ask, because everyone
Mhm.
is meeting you for the delightful charm that you bring to the conversation, but they're
Mhm.
also looking to see how they can help you and how you can help them. It's like, how do
Mhm.
you fit into the puzzle piece of this existence? That's just what we do. That's just how we are here. And
Mhm.
I mean, I think everyone everywhere does that to a certain extent, because everyone's life is a puzzle and they want to know where all the pieces are going.
Yeah.
But here it's so work focused that it's like, if I'm if I'm looking to direct something, well, then I'm looking for talent to be in that thing.
Mhm.
So I always, when people first move here with like that hope and optimism in their eyes, I'm like, what do you do?
Yeah. And then you really did take the initiative also in your career, because you had kind of a split stream, because you started your career, or at least your IMDb page, with Extreme Makeover, Home Edition, and the Nostradamus Effect, which I'm going to ask you about. But you were also running your own podcast called the Popcorn Mafia.
Yep.
And how did the decision to get that started, what was the impetus behind that?
I was working crew jobs when I
Mhm.
when I got here. Like, my very first job was in a movie theater, which was amazing. And I
Nice.
met so many artists who I know still today, who I am now interviewing, which is so cool.
Nice.
So cool.
Who I gotta ask, who are some of those artists? You gotta
Oh, I mean, Peter Atencio directed Key and Peele for years. He
Oh,
just
nice.
directed Bert Kreischer's new movie. There was a huge fancy premiere, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Peter! Like, this is so great!" Remember when we were drinking like $8 a case beer in our apartments and like hanging out and dreaming about doing this? Like, you remember? Um, and Esham and Ian Nelms are
Mhm.
two filmmakers. They just worked with Orlando Bloom. They've worked with, I mean, just Danny Glover, so many great actors. They just keep getting better and better with their movies. I love,
Mhm.
so fun to be able to promote people's stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, especially because they're good. Thank God they're good. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Whew. I mean, actors like, actors, I turn on a sitcom and I'm like, "Oh
Mhm.
my God, it's Deb, it's Chelsea. Like, this is so great." Um, so I ended up editing, I was shooting a little
Mhm.
bit,
Mhm. Mhm.
but all of my movie theater friends and I really liked talking about movies. So I was like, well, we should sell a show. But at the
Mhm.
time, I didn't really know. I mean, selling a show is hard. It
Mhm.
wasn't really working. And we were like, well, what can we do
Mhm.
that we're in control of? And at the time, we were like, oh, let's start a podcast. And it wasn't, we weren't like the first podcast to ever exist.
Mhm.
However, the market was not as saturated as it was now, and it was not common or even really likely at all that you were going to get paid by someone else to do it.
Mm.
You had to monetize it yourself. And
Right.
was still kind of the Wild West. So my co-host and I just started doing a podcast in my teeny tiny little studio apartment, and
Mm-hmm.
we tested it. And the thing that we started out with was the very clear conversation of, we are going to treat this as like a job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we are going to treat this like every week you get an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Our goals are A, B, C, D, E.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just kind of found something that we liked that felt like a good rhythm, and we just went with it. And we started doing live shows.
Mm-hmm.
We started to get recognized at Comic-Con. That's when I knew
Yeah.
that we were onto something.
And I
And
want to say you made some really great videos from your interviews at Comic-Con. They were fucking hilarious. So.
thank you. It like I mean that it's that's just always how I felt about this, is that
Mhm.
this is entertainment. I don't really count what I do as journalism because I have a lot of respect for journalists.
Mhm.
Um, I think I consider myself an entertainer because I'm
Mhm.
doing something so we can fool around, and we're definitely not curing cancer with a movie review. And so we want to make people laugh,
Mhm.
and spark their interest in something.
Mhm.
So the live show, like the first live show that we did, we had
Mhm.
Andy Dick as our guest.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And we he was in a good patch at the time.
Mhm.
It was during an ankle monitor time, and he was so great to us. He was really helpful. He was so funny. He he delivered on what he
Mhm.
promised. Um, it was like truly deeply memorable working with him. And
Wow.
the next year, when we had our next live show, we wanted to have a nod to his episode, and we asked him to help us with a short film that we were making
Mhm.
for the next live show. And he he did it. He showed up, and
Oh.
he was so like, and what was
Yeah.
great was that I pitched it to him. I pitched him the idea. He pitched him the idea, and he was like, "I love it. It's really funny. I just here's some ideas."
Mhm.
And he gave me some really good ideas. He came to
Mhm.
set. He like essentially kind of rewrote what he was doing in front of our very eyes.
Mhm.
And for us in that particular environment that was not especially high pressure,
Mhm.
it was marvelous. Like, it
Yeah.
was so cool to watch a professional person of that caliber and
Mhm.
talent take our material and really turn it into something that worked.
Nice.
Yeah, he was really lovely to us, and consistently lovely. And I it makes me, I wish him the best because I know he through a lot. And I'm so grateful to him that he just for like literally no reason and no benefit to himself
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
really nice to us. It's such a kind of rare story.
Well, good. And I've heard that about a lot of people who have had troubled incidents or histories. Like when they're good, they're really, really great. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and it's,
Yeah.
geez, boy, this town again, man, exploits your weakness. Whatever
Yeah.
your weakness is, it's
Mhm.
gonna find it and draw it right out of you. And it's like, oh God, and it is just so dark sometimes. Woo!
Yes. Yes. Um, I want I won't ask that.
I was
Uh,
in bed with him in that short, by the way.
oh, wait, what?
Not unclothed bed, no sex
Right,
scene,
right.
not like that. But
Yeah.
like I love those photos of like us, like I God, it's great. I'm in our friend's bed with Andy Dick spitting pills into his hand. Great. Really
If
funny.
if I can find that, that's the thumbnail for this
Oh,
episode.
I know.
Um, so like, okay, so then how did you balance it? Because if you're working crew jobs or associate producer jobs, those are rigorous 12-hour days, sometimes 6-day weeks. How did you balance it between that and having a reliable podcast every week for several years? You were putting that
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
I think I just had more energy then.
Mm-hmm.
And like the thing about those jobs, Extreme Makeover Home Edition, I worked in the casting department.
Mm-hmm.
I would film the potential families for the stories
Mm-hmm.
and edit their story, and that would be the pitch reel that the network saw. So I
Okay.
met all of the families in consideration for a new house, not just the one that got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeesh. And
Yeesh. What?
on it's like, such an emotional job.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because for anybody that's familiar with the show, it's like a
Mm-hmm.
family that has been put through the ringer for some reason
Yeah.
gets a new house in 7 days,
Mm-hmm.
and ooh, it's just a lot. It's to jump into a situation where you are in with a stranger with a
Mm-hmm.
camera on your shoulder, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hi, so tell me about your most painful thing that's going on with you or your family."
Mm-hmm.
And go.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
weird. It was a weird job. And
Very
but
vague.
I started to notice though that
Mm-hmm.
I was emotionally connecting with people very quickly.
Mm.
That just seemed to be something that I would do that was unique to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was started to be sent to film these more stories and more things because they
Mm-hmm.
were getting better content back. Um,
Oh.
and so shows like Nostradamus Effect, I was working as a research person
Mm-hmm.
largely. So like, if you want to know anything about the end of the world, I could probably dredge it up somewhere in my brain. Um, so that and those and also Ancient Aliens, that show.
Yeah, I also saw that. Yeah. I mean, can I ask you a question? Like on shows like Ancient Aliens and other stuff like that, um, did you guys behind the scenes know like this is bullshit? Like
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
everybody's level of belief would vary,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
the the thing you have to be willing to take on in order to make the show
Yeah.
is at least an attitude of, I don't know, like, okay, Giorgio Tsoukalos with your crazy hair that has become a meme on the internet, like, you tell me why this is,
Mhm.
and I can't really disprove it per se.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, what as long as they believe it,
Mhm.
that's all
Mhm.
we really care about. And it's, I think that stuff is fascinating, even though
Mhm.
I definitely don't necessarily buy into every theory we presented. Our job was to
Mhm.
present theories and then present people who could speak about them in an informed way. That's it, really.
Got it. Okay.
So,
Well, cool.
get paid to bullshit.
It's almost like falling back into that PR role.
That's all anybody out here does in just in
Yeah.
different ways, really. So,
Yes, we are all out here marketing ourselves. Tell me about your experience and the strategy you used to market yourself.
the word strategy is all like always makes me feel like really smart when I say it, but then when I think about it in practice, I'm like, is this a strategy? I think I think for me, like when I started to realize like I got hired to write movie reviews
Mhm.
because they knew the podcast.
Mhm.
I started doing movie interviews because they knew the podcast, but also because that time I spent at Extreme Makeover Home Edition had started to clue me in on how I am in this world,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is nosy. Um, but not in such an intrusive way that people don't tell me anything. Like I'm the kind of person that I'm in line at the grocery store and the person in front of me turns around and starts telling me about their very difficult divorce. And then we end up hugging while their groceries are getting rung up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And I love being that person. And so I don't know that I see what I do as employing a strategy.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's just knowing what I can do and where I am the most expressed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm working with the news now, and the audience is significantly different than my audience was at Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
At Rotten Tomatoes, they were very informed about movies. They wanted deep dive information. They wanted funny. Whereas the news, obviously, the audience is less into films and TV.
Mm-hmm.
You need to back it up a couple steps for them.
Mm-hmm.
However, they do still like seeing people that they recognize in an unusual situation or conversation.
Mm.
So, I think one of the things I've had to realize over the years is that it's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's about my audience. Who am I speaking to at that time? Because what they care about is what I need to talk about. Because, like, can I get cute and do dumb stuff with people? Yes, no problem. That's what I love. That's not always appropriate.
Mm.
And so it's, I think that, in the years after being with outlets that are very movie focused,
Mm-hmm.
my strategy really is more like, what am I interested in? What makes my heart happy?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I think I can contribute something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ideally in the long term. And so it's also after many, many years of being this person,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to, like, people already know what they're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Because they go, oh, yeah, this is a pink hair girl. Like, sure. She's, yeah. She knows about movies, but we're probably going to end up being stupid. I mean, that's what I like. That's what's fun to me. And so it's something along those lines, I think, that is what I consider now.
Mm-hmm.
I can absolutely deliver something that is serious, or I don't know the right word for it. Like uh basic, not basic in the bad sense, but just basic, like, what is this movie about? What did
Mm-hmm.
you like about the script? What do you think about your famous co-star? I mean, I can do that, no problem.
Yeah.
If that's what the audience needs, then cool. But what makes my heart sing is something else.
Right. A very non-academic kind of view of things. Um,
Yeah, and I mean, I like nerding out with people just as much as the next guy. Like, when you're
yeah.
talking to Peter Jackson, you definitely want to discuss frame rates, like,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
But that conversation might need to take a backseat
Mm-hmm.
to something else, maybe.
Got it.
So
Okay.
so maybe one of the main components of my strategy is to do my best to know when ego is bubbling,
Your own ego.
and and like when I need to dial it down.
Okay. Okay. It does sound like a very like service oriented position in a way. Like
Yeah, I mean, unless it's your show.
yeah, which hopefully you will get soon. Um
Yeah, I love it.
yeah. But like it also sounds like, a lot of the because I do a lot of self-help stuff, and in that context what you're describing is like finding out what your strengths are and then turning it into a personal brand to how you can assist someone else, whether it's a producer or an interviewer or what have you. Um,
Yeah, I mean, people at this point,
yeah.
people hire me
Mhm.
because they know what I deliver.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm not really considered for most of those jobs where people just want, sort of basic questions like that. I'm not, nobody wants me for that.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually be I would actually be problematic in that job because I just immediately there's too much of me here.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I'm doing something that is more standard or less or more serious, there's still a lot of me. And I never set out to have this look either, because my hair is pink and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's a bold statement. Um, and now I can't get rid of it though.
That's right, because you're the pink-haired movie critic. Huh?
Now it's a part of me, and I think it's actually truth in advertising because when you see it, I think generally people's response, I mean, as long as you're not reading YouTube comments, um, they're like, I don't know how it works, but it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
So
and okay. So then I've developed a theory the past couple of years, and I want you to tell me if you've employed something similar to it or slightly different, which is every year I pick, something that I've done and I'm proud of, and then my goal for the following year is to double that, whether it's views or subscribers or minutes directed, etc. Did you take a tactic similar to that when you were growing your own personal brand, or?
I operate a lot looser than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, I'm like my tendency towards anxiety has me living in the future so much.
Mm,
My approach to my career in an attempt to balance that out has
mm,
been to try and be as present as possible.
mm,
And because my positions before the pandemic were long term,
mhm, mhm,
I it wasn't fully necessary for me to come up with like big long term plans.
mm,
I could probably do with having more of that in my life, and I think that's what my life right now is.
mhm,
Sort of, what have I been up to? What's the goal? Like, I do think that I need to sketch it out a little bit more definitely, we're a little more defined.
mhm,
But I always was sort of thinking like, what am I doing and how does it feel?
mhm,
And if it felt like the right thing to do, then I would keep exploring that.
mhm,
But I'm doing it in the as presently as I can. Um,
mm.
yeah, so I'm not a big like 5 or 10 year plan person.
Got it.
I
Yeah.
don't really like that. It's because it makes me feel anxious.
Mm, okay.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I could do with more of it, and I understand that it needs to be balanced, but I definitely was like, "Oh, the junket for Magic Mike 2 is coming up, and I'm gonna dress up like a male stripper." So it's that was kind of the most planning that I did.
Okay, that's the second thumbnail for this episode. Oh my God. So then you bring up something very, like, I think we all, myself included, deal with anxiety in this industry.
Mm.
What's your favorite self-care routine?
Ooh, well, my Xanax first. Love a medication.
Nice.
Because for years and years, I just thought I was nervous and I didn't know that I could be medicated for anything.
Mhm,
Um, but that has really helped because the way that I've had it explained to me is that it's a catalyst for helping you learn skills
mhm,
that you wouldn't have been able to learn otherwise. Like you
mhm.
kind of need to get your body down to a certain baseline level before you can journal
Yes.
consistently or like meditate or get the ability to take a walk.
Mhm,
And so though actually that's the thing that I've been doing a lot of is focusing on movement. So for me, like, movement is so important because I love being stationary and sitting and watching movies and TV shows. So movement is a big one for me, and learning about my body
Mm-hmm.
in terms of alignment is really like appealing to the scientific nerd in me. Um,
Mm.
I've been working with a physical therapist without having an injury, and
Mm.
we've been working on realigning my body so that uh like some of the minor challenges that I faced, that
Mm-hmm.
most people face, by the way, were corrected in the long term. And the way that I move has completely changed. And like, I'm such a nerd for it because I never really knew that I never really knew that was possible with bodies. That's what's wild about this is that, like, leave it again because it's sort of like, hey, I'm noticing something weird. Let's poke around in this and like see what comes up, because I was sort of mad that I couldn't do push-ups without hurting my neck, and I
Mm.
couldn't really lunge without sort of losing my balance. And I thought that it was my fault for
Mm.
not being strong enough. And then I started talking to professionals. I think honestly my phone heard me talking about it and started pulling up ads. I wish I were kidding.
Mm-hmm.
And I started talking to professionals about what I could and couldn't do, and they would tell me why that was.
Mm.
Blew my mind.
Wow.
And the pandemic was such a big dip for me
Mm-hmm.
that I have gained back a lot more confidence
Mm-hmm.
because I am literally physically moving through the world with more confidence.
Oh, okay.
It's funny how it's actually that's one of my strategies and part of my self-care
Mm-hmm.
is not micro focusing
Mm-hmm.
on what's going on, but bringing in some kind of new energy that I think is probably unrelated, that it turns out it's totally related. It's like if you're an accountant and you feel stagnant, if let me put it this way, if I was an accountant and I felt stagnant in my career,
Mm-hmm.
I would take an improv class because it's all
Yeah.
part of the same thing, and you never know how it's all going to come together. And I mean, it's I'm fascinated by what I've been through just with these sort of physical changes that I've brought about with
Mm-hmm.
by working with professionals, and that's how it's helped me get my mind right for my work.
And with that, I'm going to ask then, if you could go back to that young Grae in Colorado doing camcorder to VCR edits, what advice would you give her?
Mm. Oh, that sweet little Grae. We just love her. And we give her grace for all of the dumb things that she does. Um, you know, gosh, I I I think, I mean, the first one is wear sunscreen, Grae. Lots of it. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say though, learn how to keep breathing, because even though you're super smart, bless you, uh, you are not psychic.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as you think you do, you don't know the future. And the more that you can breathe through the uncertainty and the more that you can steer straight into the storm and maintain integrity, you're going to be fine. You're going to see how it's going to come together, and you never could have predicted that, but it always does.
And that is Season 3, Episode 4 of the Producers Lounge podcast. Thank you to my guest, Grae Drake, for joining us. You can find out more about her by checking out the show notes and subscribing to our YouTube channels at Greater Grander. Our intro and outro music today was Jumpin' Boogie Boogie by Audionautics. Our episode still image is by Emery from Andy Dick in Juno's Body. We'd love to hear from you, and you can check out this week's accompanying article on greaterandgrander.com entitled 9 Secrets to Appear Hyper-Competent and Professional Every Time. Link in the show notes. You can stay up to date by following us on YouTube and social media at the handle Greater Grander, all one word. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever fine podcasts are found. And also, if you like what we do, share this podcast with a friend who you think will enjoy it. Join us next week for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.